I'm the Director of Resource Mobilization and Development at the Caribbean Tourism Organization, and I have the honor of being your chairperson for this morning's launch proceedings. Before we proceed, we're asking persons to kindly turn their videos off and mute their mics as a courtesy when presentations are taking place. However, the respective speakers will turn their videos on for their presentation. Thank you all. The Caribbean Tourism Organization is very pleased to host this regional webinar for the official public launch and unveiling of the Caribbean Sustainable Tourism Policy and Development Framework 2020, the multi-hazard risk management guide for the Caribbean tourism sector, and the first CTO online training platform and online courses. We wish to acknowledge the financial support from the European Union in the framework of the African, Caribbean, Pacific, and European Union Natural Disaster Risk Management in the CARIFORUM program, managed by the Caribbean Development Bank, which supported implementation of project activities, including the manuals and the online training platform that will be launched here today. Once again, I extend a wholehearted welcome to everyone. At this time, I wish to invite Mr. Neil Walters, Acting Secretary General of the Caribbean Tourism Organization, to deliver the official welcome remarks. Mr. Walters.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Sharon, for your introduction. I first want to say welcome to any of our ministers and directors of tourism from CTO member countries who may be joining us today. I also want to acknowledge the presence of Dr. Yves Persona, the NDRM Program Manager at the Caribbean Development Bank, and Dr. Venkataraman Balihi, who's the Vice President of the Commonwealth of Learning. I also want to acknowledge our project consultants who are present here today, Dr. Jennifer Edwards, Mr. Evan Green, who I'm not sure if I saw him, and Mr. Kyle McKee, representing Niagara College in Canada. And of course, I want to extend a warm welcome to all the webinar partners from our CTO member countries, to any CTO allied and affiliate members present, our regional international partners, regional stakeholders, representatives of the media, and of course, our staff members and other invited guests. In March of 2017, the Caribbean Development Bank approved a grant of €460,173, which amounts to just over 500,000 US dollars, to implement the Supporting a Climate Smart and Sustainable Caribbean Tourism Industry project. This project was funded by the European Union in the framework of the ACP EU Natural Disaster Risk Management, we've used the acronym before, NDRM, in the CARIFORUM program managed by the CDB. The overall objective of the project being to mainstream climate and disaster resilience, provide tools to support sustainable tourism development, and to deliver training and resources for capacity building to contribute to the sustainability and growth of the regional tourism sector. Implementation of this project over the past 3 years has included a regional education and awareness campaign through social media engagement and a televised documentary series, feasibility study to inform the needs related to climate services in tourism, several regional fora and training workshops in the Bahamas, Belize, Dominica, Jamaica, and Haiti, and regional consultations through a comprehensive survey to determine the challenges, needs, and priorities related to the sustainable development of tourism, among others. Today, the Caribbean Tourism Organization is pleased to formally launch 3 key project deliverables: an updated Caribbean Sustainable Tourism Policy and Development Framework, a multi-hazard risk management guide, and the first ever CTO online training platform, courses on the Sustainable Tourism Framework and multi-hazard guide, respectively. The Sustainable Tourism Policy and Development Framework is an amalgamation of broad policy guidelines, cross-cutting issues identified as regions. It contains recommendations for strategic and best practice guidelines to resolve some of the key regional challenges which threaten the tourism sector. The Multi-Hazard Risk Management Guide is a practical tool to support tourism sector mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery to various types of hazards, including climate-related hazards such as hurricanes and storms, geological hazards such as earthquakes and volcanoes, and biological hazards including the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and others. CTO recognizes that it is important to build the capacity of governments, private sector, and community actors to promote adoption and utilization of the updated Sustainable Tourism Framework and Multi-Hazard Guide. To fulfill this objective, the training courses were designed to facilitate understanding and foster implementation of the best practices to member country realities. We therefore view the online training platform and courses as important tools to build regional and institutional capacity and support ongoing training and capacity building. CTO is extremely grateful for the technical assistance provided by the CDB and for the financial support from the ACP EU and the DRM program. We are also grateful for the contribution and support of project partners, the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, better known as SEDEMA, Caribbean Institute for Meteorology and Hydrology, the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center, 5Cs, the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association, and the Commonwealth of Learning. Thanks also to other regional partners, the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States Commission, the OECS as well better known, the Organization of American States, the OAS, University of the West Indies, and sectoral institutions, the Caribbean Public Health Agency, the Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture, and others. Most importantly, we extend our thanks to the consultants for the stellar work done in seeing this project to completion, and to all CTO member countries for your valuable engagement and input throughout the course of this project. I thank you, and I look forward to today's presentations. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walters. I'm now pleased to welcome Dr. Eve Persona, Natural Disaster Risk Management Program Manager in the Environmental Sustainable Unit of the Caribbean Development Bank. Dr. Persona has played an integral role in CTO being awarded the Supporting a Climate Smart and Sustainable Caribbean Tourism Industries project. He has continued to provide guidance throughout project implementation, also providing technical input to finalize various project deliverables. Dr. Persona is a bilingual project manager and researcher with expertise in the areas of climate change, disaster risk management, and international development. Dr. Persona will provide us with some insights on climate and disaster resilience and the CDB NDRM support for the regional tourism sector. Dr. Persona, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the introduction. I recognize the protocol that has been established. I also want to recognize Mr. Neil Waters, CTO Secretary General acting. It is a distinct honor to be part of this event today and to deliver this remark. Everyone present this morning knows that the Caribbean is extremely vulnerable to natural hazard and climate change effects. Disaster resulting from natural hazard events, so-called natural disasters, have posed significant challenges to the economic performance, productivity, livelihood, and quality of life in the Caribbean. We are likely to see increased disaster risk and impact in the Caribbean over the 21st century, given climate projection for rising sea levels, a hotter temperature, more variable rainfalls, and more intense hurricanes in the region. The recent high intensity hurricanes that we experienced, give example of Maria and Irma in 2017 and Dorian in 2019, are indicative of what the Caribbean is likely to expect in the future with climate change. These reality underscore the urgency to design and implement adequate initiatives to address disaster risks and enhance resilience to climate change in our effort to achieve sustainable development in the Caribbean. The Caribbean Development Bank is determined to play his part in helping build our region's resilience to disaster. To do so, the bank has adopted a holistic risk-layered approach with an emphasis on proactive intervention to reduce disaster risks, accelerate post-early recovery and reconstruction effort, and continuously build resilience. The bank has developed strategic partnership and provided appropriate financial and technical assistance to our borrowing members countries. Over the last decade, we mobilized more than 450 million US dollar to offer increased access to concessional financing for disaster risk management and climate resilience. Recognizing the challenges posed by the climate and disaster risk to the sustainability of the tourism industry, CDB provided grant financing of 460,000 euro to the CTO to implement the supporting climate smart and sustainable Caribbean tourism industry project. We commend CTO for the successful project implementation and the launch of these 3 key project deliverables today. This project is financed through the 12.3 million provided by the European Union within the framework of the ACP EU CDB Natural Disaster Risk Management in CARIFORM Country Program, in short, NDIM program. In addition to this project with CTO, we have provided through the NDIM program grant to strengthen the capacity of national and regional institutions responsible for disaster risk management, weather and climate monitoring and forecasting. These include the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, CDMA, the Caribbean Institute for Meteorology and Hydrology, CIMH, and the Climate Studies Group, MONA, of the University of the West Indies, CIGM, and the National Hydrometeorological Services. We have also financed the development of a climate change policy for the Office of Climate Change in Guyana. We supported the design and implementation of customized tools for multi-hazard risk assessment and climate resilience for key economic sectors, including water, transport, and tourism. We upgraded the flood early warning system of the Rio Cobre in Jamaica and strengthened community preparedness and response capability in Portmore, Jamaica to natural hazard events. We supported strengthening school safety and resilience policy, including national safe policy, national school safe policy with CDMA for Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, St. Kitts and Nevis, and St. Lucia. We also facilitated access to reliable climate data and information through the publication of the State of the Caribbean Climate Report. This is just a subset of the key achievement of the NDIM program. Ladies and gentlemen, Allow me to reiterate that CDB will continue to work proactively and collaboratively with its partner to mobilize consortial financing and seek for synergy to heighten disaster risk management and climate change intervention in the borrowing members' country. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Persona, and once again, thank you very much to the Caribbean Development Bank. Ladies and gentlemen, kindly allow me to introduce to you Dr. Jennifer Edwards, Policy Development Specialist and Sustainable Tourism Consultant, who was contracted to produce the Caribbean Sustainable Tourism Policy and Development Framework 2020. Dr. Edwards is a highly qualified tourism development specialist with extensive experience in public and private sector development, strategic action planning, business development, MSME and human capital development, organizational strengthening, and cooperative development. Dr. Edwards is a national of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and resides in the Bahamas. We now invite Dr. Edwards to make her presentation and to give us an overview of the Caribbean Sustainable Tourism Policy and Development Framework. Dr. Edwards, over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Manfield. And protocol having been established, I will continue. Good morning, everyone. I was very pleased to be involved in working on this framework with the region and of course with the Caribbean Tourism Organization. So as required, in terms of an overview, the Caribbean Sustainable Tourism Policy Framework, and as you'd see the acronym CSP-TPDF, it's like all policies, it's really a starting point for most things for anything that you want done in tourism in the region. So the idea of the policy, its general purpose is to guide the vision for sustainable development of the Caribbean tourism in the next decade. The policy itself, going on, Mr. Walters alluded to it in his opening remarks, it brings together 7 broad but integrated policy thematic areas. And basically these 7 areas reflect the current regional needs and priorities that are seen as critical to sustainable development in the Caribbean region, and certainly for Caribbean tourism. And alluding to, as you would hear the information from what Dr. Persona just mentioned, it is still guided by the post-2015 Global Agenda for Climate Change, Disaster Risk Resilience and Management, and Sustainable Development. So the framework itself has these really broad, all-encompassing areas. A key part of this, though, in development of the framework was narrowing down on the issues, the concerns, and the needs. And as you would see, definitely in terms of what was happening in the region, what are the needs at the national level. So for all member states, it was very critical into the policy, in the development and updating of the policy, to understand where they are at in terms of how they are viewing anything in sustainable tourism nationally. Of course, there was also a general regional concern because there are regional agencies and globally, what is happening globally. So the framework was able to incorporate national issues and concerns with a regionally as well, and of course globally. The key approach in terms of getting the information for the framework was, one of the main things was an online survey held in which 192 participants were engaged. As you can see, just a summary from the graphs, we were able to have input from all of CTO member countries. So it's from Barbados, the largest percentage there, you would have seen engagement from Barbados, but all the way at least down to St. Martin. And you'd also see that there was a large input from regional and extra-regional members or stakeholders involved in the Caribbean. The participation rate was both, you'd see the CTO, private sector, NGO stakeholders and government. And in terms of participation by organization type, we are so happy that within the framework, we were able to get a good section of stakeholders from academic institutes, the private businesses themselves, the association, funding agencies, regional organizations, statutory, and of course, the ministries of government, all the government departments. So in terms of the participants, we are so happy to have the input of at least a representative from all of CTO member states. In addition to having the survey, there were country consultations. One was held in Dominica, Barbados, and the Bahamas. Then there were regional consultations in which the entire input from CTO member countries were engaged, and those were held in St. Kitts and the Bahamas. And of course, in addition to that, across the 3-year period, well, not 3 year, from 2018 to this year, we had individual inputs from CHA. We had, of course, these are just some of them, the regional agencies. We had input and guidance and feedback. So at the end of what is included in the CSTPDF, it really brought together the input and had basically a good range of the private sector, public sector, NGO sector, regional, in terms of global issues, regional issues, and national issues. Of course, now when you have all of that, it's how do you put that all together in one document? And this is where the 7 key elements came in. We had to, of course, sectionize, and this is where we say we had 7 integrated areas. So all of the issues, all of the concerns, everything that's going on were categorized into 7 headings. So one of the questions I've been asked is, someone said to me, but you know, HR is an extremely important section. That should be section alone. But guess what? Of course it is a very important section, but it's under one of these. It's of course, in all of the sections, you must deal with that. So what we try to do is bring out 7 key general areas. And within these, you have a range of various areas, which I will go through as I come on. So the 7 broad integrated areas that we saw when we looked at all of the issues, the concerns, fell into these 7 areas. Destination management capacity, of course, that's very broad. I'll go into a little in terms of what is in there. The second area within the CSTPDF is destination access and transportation. The third area, destination marketing, PR, and product development. Then 4, linkages and tourism value chain management. And the 5th is actually resource use and management. And 6, climate smart actions. And 7, risk resilience. They are not placed in any order of this is more important than the other. They are just given within. So it's not that one is more important. One was actually a starting, because it's dealing with a destination, and you would see it's leading in terms of making sure that policies and strategies are in place. It's given 1, but it does not mean that it's any less important than 7, which is risk resilience, and which right now it's extremely one of the, if you have to put in terms, well, it's one of the ones that has been placed on the top at this moment. So those are the 7 broad integrated policy areas, and that you would find within the policy framework. Just in each policy framework, each section comes with a policy. And I just, you see it looks a bit lot, but these are just the policy development goal for each one of the policy. There's an overarching goal. For instance, destination management capacity, the entire goal for that section is to ensure adequate and appropriate national and regional capacity to manage the development, growth, and sustainability of tourism. Regardless of what is going on anywhere, if there isn't the level of capacity and the leadership for managing the development of the growth, it is not going to be as successful as you think. So this part deals with just about a range of areas. Again, I said I'll look at it a little further down. So these are the 7 given areas, the 7 policy development goals. I wouldn't get into all of them. In terms of how the document itself is arranged, each goal or the integrated policy, each policy is given. This will capture all of the related priorities for that particular area. So let's say the policy area for climate actions, that policy area will capture all of the issues and concerns related to climate action for that particular policy. And the starting in each section gives you the context. So there's a little introduction or a little context in terms of the importance, why it's being looked at, and just at this point, what should really be done, and so on. General overview, some data in terms of the history in the Caribbean, worldwide, but to put it in its correct placing and context. The other area, it then is the key issues. In that section, it pinpoints specific issues within the region. So as you're going, you will see again the context, the background, the issues, and the key areas. Then the third area would be that development goal. So the development goal that I just pointed out will be the key area. And then we have all of the areas for policy action. So in every given section, there are about 3 to 5 areas for policy action. And what is interesting that I didn't say before is that all of the policy actions area would give you an idea of what UNSDG goals are being addressed. So for instance, management capacity, and that's because it's the first one, destination management capacity, you would see when you look at the areas that for policy action, it may cover 4 of the UNSDGs. And so this would continue in all of them. It will identify the 4 and give a little summary of in which manner, in what way they would be helping to address these UNSDGs. Interestingly enough, as you all know, UNSDGs highlighted the role of tourism in 3 areas, 8, 12, policy 8, goal 8, 12, and 14. But what we have seen in the policy, tourism, all of the 7 broad integrated policy were able to address every single one of the UNSDGs. And that shows the power of tourism as certainly a means in terms of development. So after the policy actions, there are specific objectives for each of the policy actions. And within each of under each of these objectives, we then give interventions, measures, and guidelines. Remember, this is a framework, so it pulls together basically generally some interventions that are noted, some good practices that are noted, some measures that are noted. Not all may be applicable to a particular destination, but it gives a variety of possible interventions, possible measures, possible guidelines that you need to think about when you're looking at that particular framework. And throughout, there are approaches taken. So for instance, in any given policy action, there may be a country that has done something similar or has addressed that policy action in a particular way. So this is able to show practical examples along the way for information. And so it was extremely, in that regard, it was extremely interesting to note that across the region, there are good things happening. The policy itself highlighted 100, it just turned out to end up being exactly 100 approaches, examples, and highlighted features. And that's just to show the good things, the good approaches that already happening in the Caribbean. The Caribbean is not starting from scratch. There are really good examples. So something that is happening in Anguilla, it's notable for something that's going on at West Turks and Caicos. So we have examples from every single 26 territories or 24 CTO member countries. So as you go through, you can pull out to see where your country was particularly highlighted. And all of these territories did input into the policy. We also had examples, good practices, and highlights from 24 agencies. You can see all the agencies who are working in the region or have something happening in the region. So from let's see, the 5C, SEDEMA, UWI, UNEP, the OACS region. So of course, within the document, you will be able to draw on something that's happening across the board. And this is now the utility of all of this. So that's one of the key questions. It's okay, so we have this big document. What exactly is it? And I like to view it as the House of Tourism or the House of Caribbean Sustainable Tourism. And basically, each of the policy is likened to a window. So it's in this house, you have 7 windows. The roof of the house definitely it's an overarching vision within the policy, the common tourism policy vision. And you would see within the document, the common tourism policy vision for entire Caribbean tourism has keywords like resilient, sustainable, high quality, viable for businesses, climate smart, inclusiveness, and empowerment. One of the leading inputs or tunneling into that house, roof of that vision, is the UNWTO guidelines that coming on with anything that is happening with tourism, sustainable tourism, it must benefit every host member, the member in the host communities. So that, of course, is a function of the vision, the overall vision. And the beams of the house, these are the policies, the development needs that are included in all of those areas. And the foundation is that anything that is happening in those windows must be based on private and public partnership, collaboration, and monitoring and evaluation. So you would see the way the windows are. I've just highlighted some, but in space of time I would just continue. It's to say, if you're looking at destination management and you open that window, you still have to remember there are other windows that you have to still look at. And finally, I leave you with this in terms of the utility. The Caribbean Sustainable Tourism Policy Development Framework, it's an excellent reference tool in terms of policies that you are developing. Remember, it's a framework, it's not a policy itself. So countries would then have to develop their policies accordingly. And the document encourages all member states that have not renewed a policy or haven't done a policy, or their policy is dated before 2015, to make sure and have a look at it now. So this policy can be adopted to update your strategies accordingly. It could be used as a platform for planning. It could be used as a wider advocacy area and much more. And just in closing, I'd like to say this has been used by St. Lucia already in looking at rationalizing their institutional arrangements and even their licensing. So there is some, the St. Lucian representatives there is some experience already with it. So in closing, that's a general overview of the policy. And thank you so much. Thanks everyone who has inputted, and back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Dr. Edwards. With the time limit, you were able to still manage to be able to give us some insight into how the policy framework came about, and when persons will have access to it, or stakeholders or members or partners will have access to this very important tool. And we invite everyone to become familiar with it, because as Dr. Edwards says, it has the ability, it has so far been helping some of our member countries in navigating their own policy frameworks. So thank you again, Dr. Edwards. Ladies and gentlemen, we invite you to write any questions or comments directed to any of our presenters here today, including the CDB and the CTO representatives, in the Q&A section of this platform. There will be a Q&A segment on our agenda towards the end, and we can have some of those questions you may have addressed. Thank you. It is now my pleasure to introduce the next presenter, Mr. Evan Green. He's the Vice President, Monitoring and Evaluation, Results-Based Management and Disaster Risk Management at the international consulting firm Bastel, headquartered in Quebec, Canada. Mr. Green has a demonstrated history of working with governments, development banks, regional agencies, and international organizations in strategic planning, capacity development, RBM, and M&E in English, French, and Spanish. As Vice President of the Bastel Consulting Group, he manages the monitoring and evaluation as well as the results-based management and disaster risk management divisions, as well as Bastel's Caribbean operations. Mr. Green was contracted as the project consultant to produce the multi-hazard risk management guide for the tourism sector. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to Mr. Green, who will provide you with a presentation and overview of the multi-hazard risk management guide for the Caribbean tourism sector. Over to you, Mr. Green.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I am Evan Green from Bastel, and it's nice to see some familiar names participating in this webinar. And it's my job today to give you a brief overview, a virtual annotated outline, if you will, of the multi-hazard risk management guide. Of course, this would not have occurred via the CTO without the support of the CDB. As already mentioned, I won't get into all the details of that, but I thought it was important to raise that. As an overall introduction, so people are aware, the purpose of the guide was very much to assist tourism stakeholders to prepare for, to respond to recover from a range of natural and other hazard events. The guide was intended to incorporate disaster risk management and climate change and gender-sensitive approaches, and includes both climate change mitigation and adaptation strategies, but there is certainly a preponderance and focus on adaptation in particular. Interesting to note that this is also the update to a manual that was originally developed in 2009 with support from the OAS and SEDERA then, SEDEMA now. The breakdown of this guide is as follows, and I'm going to walk you through the outline of the guide today and give you sort of a brief overview, and hope people get the chance to dive into the guide and use it moving forward. So the structure is after a robust introduction, the guide walks you through the framework for multi-hazard risk management across the region. And then the intention was to develop 4, if you will, pull-out sections for each of the 4 phases of disaster risk management. The first on mitigation, then preparedness, response, recovery. And it's complemented by a set of disaster risk management templates, such as for a disaster risk management plan itself and for business continuity planning, and a set of annexes, which I'll detail at the end of this brief presentation. So the guide starts off by detailing a number of the key elements around the importance and the vulnerability and the structure of the Caribbean tourism sector. The 8 tourism subsectors are outlined and discussed. And then the guide takes the reader through an overview and introduction to disaster risk management and climate change, providing a number of key definitions, examples, etc. With regards to disaster risk management, the different phases of the cycle, as mentioned previously, are detailed and explained. A number of key definitions are described even upfront in terms of terms that are going to be used throughout the guide, like risk and disaster, etc. And then the focus is on climate change in the Caribbean tourism sector and what are some of the key impacts, examples of those, and that's complemented by an annex that has more examples of those for the reader to tap into. The sort of differences between climate change mitigation and climate change adaptation are discussed. And then the process for tourism climate change adaptation is brought forward to the reader in detail. And then an overarching section on gender-sensitive approaches to disaster risk management and climate change more generally are discussed. But each of the pull-out phases, pull-out sections of the guide and the 4 phases has a standalone section on gender equality and gender-sensitive approaches as well. In terms of the framework for multi-hazard risk management, what the guide will walk the reader through is everything from the international level, from the Sendai framework, the Paris Agreement on climate change, the SDGs, and then goes into the regional level in terms of the CARICOM regional framework for achieving development resilient to climate change. And of course, the guide would be remiss if it didn't talk about the Caribbean Sustainable Tourism Policy and Development Framework, more recently developed and so eloquently presented just before. But this is also covered briefly in the guide as part of the context. But the guide tries to situate the Caribbean tourism sector within the DRM implementation framework from the strategic level, across the region and nationally in terms of the key committees that are involved, the tactical level in terms of implementation, all the way down to the operational level on the ground for particular tourism establishments. Of course, there is a section talking about the key hazards and vulnerability in the tourism sector, and there are prioritized hazards that are in focus in the guide that are highlighted here. Of course, under the hydrometeorological category, tropical storms, hurricanes, floods, storm surge, but under the geological, the earthquakes are of course addressed, and as is germane to our current challenges under the biological human epidemics are covered as well. And then that leads us to those pull-out sections. So for each one of these, there is a particular sort of structure. We start with mitigation, and each of the 4 phases are going to have a similar structure and breakout. The first is the definitions. What do we mean by mitigation? The key elements of that particular phase are discussed and broken down. The sub-elements to those elements are discussed. Examples are brought from across the region. And then each of these sections are complemented at the end by 3 things. One is sort of a review, summary, and checklist. The other is a focus in on the gender equality considerations, and then a list of further resources that the reader can tap into to get more information on that particular subject. And a lot of them are from across the region, which has a wealth of amazing resources to tap into in this area. So under mitigation, the key elements that are addressed by the guide include risk identification and assessment. The sub-elements that are addressed are risk identification and characterization, hazard data collection and mapping, vulnerability assessment, and then the guide will detail the difference between structural and non-structural measures, and under non-structural risk transfer is, of course, discussed. And under non-structural, we're going to have sections where we'll discuss things like the environmental management laws, building codes, awareness raising, training and education, and throughout examples of where there are recent progress being made by a number of countries in these areas, and examples of the tourism sector across the region developing new awareness raising material like this one here from Dominica. And so it exposes the reader to a number of different ways in which perhaps their tourism establishment might want to learn from or be inspired by some of the materials and some of the activities that are taking place across the region. As mentioned, at the end of the section, there is a summary, review, and checklist for the reader to use to guide themselves as they move forward in implementing elements related to that phase. Addressing gender, there will be some things specific to each phase. Under mitigation, we'll talk about gender considerations in information and education and communication, advocacy issues. And as I mentioned earlier, then we'll have a list of further resources for that phase, in particular here for mitigation. And there's a number of websites that the reader can tap into to get some more information. After mitigation, the next phase in the disaster risk management cycle is preparedness. The key elements under preparedness are planning, early warning systems, training, awareness and education. Under planning, the guide is going to get into detail about how the tourism emergency assessment plan should be prepared, how to identify and equip the command center, compiling a list of emergency resources, establishing mutual aid third-party agreements, establishing standard operating procedures and testing those and conducting simulations and drills. Issues related to early warning systems will be covered, and a number of examples are presented in the guide of interesting or innovative and existing early warning systems that exist across the region that are useful to A, know about, but B, also be inspired by and learn from. A number of different examples are brought for the reader to tap into in annex as well as in the main document. Some examples with regards to training that have been taking place across the region. You'll note that a lot of the material in there is very, very recent, as this was an update of an earlier version of the guide. The attempt was made to really capture all the really innovative and up-to-date and amazing things happening across the region that can really be useful resources for the tourism stakeholders to tap into as they think about planning for disaster risk management across their sector or just in their establishments. So I have a couple of examples that we brought, but the guide has many of them for them to tap into. Once again, as we move on to the next phase, which is response, there will be a definition of what response is, the key elements and sub-elements. In this case, the key elements that are covered are mobilization of emergency services and first responders, damage assessment, needs analysis, and of course, the fundamental issue of communication. When it comes to damage assessment and needs analysis, we cover issues related to the national level and then the sectoral level that the subsector entities will want to think about and assess as quickly as possible as part of that response phase. And then with regards to crisis communication, detailed guidelines are provided within the guide, checklists and ideas for stakeholders to use to develop pre-event communication, during event communication, post-event communication, ideas around messaging, developing communication strategies, etc. And again, some examples of some protocols that are being developed across the region, like this innovative one from St. Lucia, are brought to the reader's attention to for them to look at and tap into. And again, the response pull-up section will be complemented at the end by a summary checklist, gender considerations, and further resources for the reader to potentially tap into. The last phase covered by the guide is recovery. And here the key elements after definitions would be provided include rehabilitation, reconstruction, and business continuity. The guide will get into some great detail about the key elements of developing a business continuity plan. Of course, as mentioned, there is a very detailed BCP template in the guide that is basically a pull-out template that the reader can use to develop their own business continuity plan for their tourism establishment or even across the sector. We have similar templates in the guide that are for an overarching disaster risk management plan, etc. So in addition to those, the introductory sections and the pull-out sections for each of the phases, there is of course a detailed glossary after those templates are provided. And this is supported then and complemented by a number of appendices, including some further detailed examples of climate change mitigation strategies that are for potential use across the sector, adaptation examples as well, a vulnerable group checklist for disaster risk management that the sector can use, and a number of different examples that might be useful and helpful for the reader to tap into. And of course, there are some selected tourism subsector disaster risk management operational guidelines and strategies that are supposed to be a part of a package that is to be a useful, relevant, practical guidebook for tourism establishments across the region to really take in, use, and implement as they move forward with the planning and implementation of disaster risk management in their establishment or across the sector in their region. So I thank you very much for your kind attention. That was an overview overview guide itself, and hope that people get a chance to dive into it and use it practically. And it's a pleasure to work with the CTO and be supported by a number of their partners, including the CIMH and CDB and SEDIMA. And thank you very much for your kind attention, and wish you a successful rest of the webinar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Green. Thank you very much for that overview to another very rich resource that will be made available to our tourism stakeholders and partners. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our featured speaker for today, Dr. Venkataram Balaji. Dr. Balaji is the Vice President at the Commonwealth of Learning, better known as CALL. A national of India, he has been an active and well-recognized leader specializing in the area of information and communication technology and the interface between technology design and rural and agricultural development. Prior to his appointment as Vice President, he worked as Director for Technology and Knowledge Management at CALL. His work in applied technology focused on testing new models and practices in technology-mediated outreach that can be deployed in support of learning at all levels. Since joining CALL, Dr. Balaji has contributed to its reputation as an innovative organization through various initiatives, including Aptus, MOOC for development, as well as a number of publications and cutting-edge knowledge management and technology services. His areas of specialization include program planning and management, data analysis, monitoring and evaluation, and ICT-enabled human resource development. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to Dr. Balaji, who will give you an introduction to CALL and provide insights on virtual engagements and learning environments in this post-COVID-19 context.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hope you're all able to hear me. And may I also say that I'm very impressed by your introduction to my work. In fact, I could borrow your script if I could, because I don't think I could write it as well as you were able to do. Thank you. And please consider all protocols observed. I recognize the presence of Dr. Persona from the Caribbean Development Bank and several other luminaries. And a number of distinguished people are among the participants, which includes my colleague, Dr. Myrat Newman. So I will make a very brief presentation on what CALL is and what we have learned by way of insights in our work during the current phase of COVID-19. The first message is that our work has become even more relevant. Our work, which links distance learning to development needs and aspirations of people of the Commonwealth, has become even more relevant than ever before. We also note that Caribbean is a very, very special region for us. In fact, a number of member countries of the CTO are also member countries of the Commonwealth of Learning. Commonwealth of Learning, like CTO, is an intergovernmental organization founded by prime ministers and presidents of Commonwealth countries in their meeting in Vancouver back in 1987. Since then, we have been hosted by the people of Canada through the Global Affairs Canada as a UN organization with all the immunities and privileges applicable. So we are very grateful to the people of Canada and the government of Canada for hosting us. We work as an organization committed to promoting improvement and expansion of access to education and training at all levels, from primary, secondary, tertiary, all the way. And we work on 3 dimensions of sustainable development with emphasis on learning. The economy, the society, and the environment, all 3 dimensions are covered in our work. We are aligned to Goal 4 of UN Sustainable Development Goals, which implies our commitment to inclusive and equitable quality education. Of course, we emphasize lifelong learning opportunities for all. We work through 2 sectors, education and skills, and gender is a common area. Besides giving ideas and insights and support to both sectors, the gender is a program in itself. Our current work emphasizes leveraging both new as well as existing technologies. And now the incidence of COVID has made a fundamental difference. In fact, we call it almost an irreversible paradigm shift, whereby the online and the distance learning mode has become more or less the standard mode, and the standard mode of face-to-face has now become a kind of a subsidiary supplementary mode. We have opened and created and we have launched and we have sustained an international partnership of distance and online learning for COVID-19, and mainly to address the needs of policymakers, senior officials, and heads of academic and training institutions across the Commonwealth, because they are in need of policy advice, practical advice, tips, as well as documents and support technologies on making the rapid transition to online and distance learning. And over 60 organizations, including UNESCO, are members of this international partnership. One of the outcomes of this partnership is a report. You can call it an output, but it's really an outcome. To a report to the Commonwealth education ministers from response to resilience. The resilience is a word that was much talked about in the previous two presentations. Resilience is not only an overarching theme, it requires sectoral approaches as well. And here we are talking of resilience of education sector as a whole, not just distance education. It's a report that is very widely appreciated. And out of that, several ideas have emerged. We've been working with a number of our partners on topics of great importance to Commonwealth countries, such as the one on the blue economy, two MOOCs, which have been offered during this COVID period. They're both led by Dr. Merit Newman, and if she has an opportunity on the online chat, she will be able to give better descriptions of these courses. Each one has attracted over 1,000 learners. And they continue to focus on, one of the emphasis has always been on tourism sector, which is vital to the economy of the Caribbean countries. We have also focused on teachers as a very special constituency, because many ministries have pointed out that if teachers don't make the transition fast, students and trainees will not be able to. So we have been working very closely with teachers across the Commonwealth. For example, in the Caribbean, we have worked with the Ministry of Education of Trinidad and Tobago to offer a MOOC on transitioning teachers to online learning. Nearly more than half the teachers in that country participated in this course, and such MOOCs are continuing for several different countries and different regions. We are also looking at very specific topics to build capacity of teachers, such as the topic of cybersecurity or mobile learning, because the teachers need to get onto these things before the students are able to get onto them. We've also launched during the COVID, we offered a course on behalf, in fact, Bahamas offered this course, the Ministry of Agriculture, along with their agencies, on good agricultural practices, because agriculture is, after tourism, is very important in many of the Caribbean countries, and food security has emerged as a priority, and therefore learning in support of improved food security is one of the priorities that we are helping member countries address. And Bahamas, which faced natural disasters, we have supported them with Aptus. It's an innovation from Call. It's the tiny computer that you see here is nearly as powerful as a desktop computer a few years back. It can support more than about 2,000 learners in a Wi-Fi network connected to it. So even if there is no electricity, grid connectivity, or data connectivity, students would still be able to access digital resources such as streaming videos. So this has been very popular in the Pacific. It's also becoming popular in the Caribbean. And where no connectivity is possible and only simple connectivity is possible, we have modified massive open online courses to deliver them using just a simple mobile phone. And these are called Mobi MOOCs. And you can see here a woman who's a scrap dealer in central India. She was one of the about 10,000 people that participated in such courses and learned about who acquired digital literacy and learned about digital marketing. And our biggest large-scale program in this regard is skilling and reskilling under the workforce recovery program of Coursera, Commonwealth of Learning in partnership with Coursera, has been able to reach out to over 115,000 individuals and receiving many of them doing multiple courses, because there is no limit to the number of courses you can do, free courses you can do under this program. This continues till end of March, and then it will change to another phase. And during this program, we must point out that Caribbean has taken advantage of this program better than any other region. Guyana has close to 30,000 learners. Barbados has several thousand learners. And these are just two examples. And they're taking very good advantage of the fact that you get access to some of the finest courses that can ever be offered in the world. We've also launched a regional video on demand service because teachers need access to open educational resources, and they cannot always wait for the best connectivity or depend on the local broadcasting systems. So we helped create a regional video on demand service, which was launched in regionally as well as nationally. Here you see the Fijian minister launching it in her own country. And COVID has brought the question of infrastructural adequacy back into focus. It's in fact a great equalizer. You find that National Academy of Sciences of United States also speaks about digital divide inside United States. In fact, we never thought that OECD country, a member country of the OECD system, would speak about digital divide at that level, but they are talking about it because learning requirements are very diverse, very intensive. And in many spots of even affluent countries, they are not able to fulfill all the connectivity requirements. So a lot of innovations are necessary. This is where CALL is well placed to support organizations such as the CTO by helping rapidly create infrastructure that can help you transition to online learning, provide support to teachers as well as to learners. And our current learning services delivery, we understand, follows the one-size-fits-all approach, but not all require the same infrastructure. In fact, we have carried out several innovations which require much lighter infrastructure for the same level of effectiveness in learning. So we have been using a program called MOOCit, a platform, and that includes messaging apps that require far less bandwidth. As part of this, we have gone on to offer a Moodle installation, which can be done in a single click, and open education resources repository, a library that can be installed in a single click. We are also developing protocols for agile course development, which will enable teachers and institutions to create courses in a very rapid fashion. We are distilling the learnings from Canada. We are distilling learnings from India, where thousands of courses were transferred in a span of short time. So, and we are very happy that we are able to help the CTO make use of one of the Moodle installations for their own rapid course development. And we are committed to supporting them further with technical advice and assistance in this process. So in the end, what is CALL? We promote learning for sustainable development. We support innovations for affordable and accessible technologies. And we would always like to serve the last person in the queue. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the chair for her introduction and the CTO for inviting CALL to be present here, and Dr. Myrat Newman for enabling our participation in this program. And I would like to share with you, or present to you, finally, the compliments from Professor Asha Kanwar, President of CALL, who's on her annual leave in India. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Balaji, and thank you very much to CALL, another one of our very valuable partners. And yes, he mentioned Myrat, and we offer sincere thanks to Myrat Newman, for who also worked very closely with us as we sought to take these two wonderful resources that you've now heard about and present them through an online course. So these have now become two online courses. And so we now move smoothly on to the presentation and unveiling of CTO's online training platform and these two online courses. It is our desire for the technical officers who will be utilizing these two resources in their day-to-day jobs, in framing their own policies, in creating or developing their own programs and projects, to be able to pull on these two very rich resources that we are making available to our stakeholders and our partners. These courses are indeed going to assist you with getting to know. I mean, you've just been provided with some overview today from our two consultants, Dr. Edwards and Mr. Green, on the two resources. However, these courses are intended to assist you in getting to better understand what the resource is all about and how you could best utilize them in your day-to-day work. So I now want to introduce you to Mr. Kyle Mackey. He's an educational consultant at the Niagara College in Canada, contracted to develop the CTO's online training platform and these training courses. Mr. Mackey has extensive experience in the area of innovative technologies, working with government, the education sector, business, media, and community groups. His work includes providing expertise, consultation, and training to harness the potential of technology to support excellence in teaching, learning, and community building. Mr. Mackey has been involved in a number of strategic and enterprise level projects. He's focused on developing creative solutions to leverage educational and technological opportunities. He's worked at TV Ontario and the University of Guelph, where he facilitated the establishment of world-class enterprise software and the development of unique educational programs and services. I now hand you over to Mr. Mackey to introduce you to this online platform.
And thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sharon. And thanks to all the organizers and the presenters of this event. I'm very happy to be here, coming to you from Guelph, Ontario, where there's snow outside. And so I've got the unique pleasure of introducing CTO's new online training platform and providing you with a brief demo of one of the courses. So I will quickly show you how the platform comes together and how users can engage with it. And then we'll dive right in and you can see the courses in a live format. So ctotourismtraining.org is the URL that CTO has been working they will be working to promote. We've been working with COL to put together the portal for people to log in. So at that site right now, you'll see some information, some welcome messages from COL, from CDB, and from CTO, some information about the courses. And for participants who want to participate in these courses, there's a two-step process. The first piece, by clicking on login and also down at the bottom, users need to have an account. So it's a fairly simple process, straightforward, where you can choose your username, your password, put in some information about who you are and your email address and where you're from. And then from there, once the user hits create my account, they get an email delivered to the email that they have provided. They click on that, their account gets created, and from there, they can access the platform. And the way the courses are set up, the two courses that are there now, they're self-enrollment. So they're available, and by clicking on Enroll Me, which is the little button down at the bottom there, that gives the user access to the course. So fairly straightforward there. I will now go into a live demo of the course. And I've created a demo user. Just let me log in here, Kyle Demo. And let me put it up to full screen again. One of the dangers of doing a live demo is that sometimes some alerts come up, but I think I've got those all under control now. So this is the dashboard that participants will log into. It gives, importantly, access to the courses that they're enrolled in. I went in and enrolled myself in both those courses. Moving forward, this will maybe become a place of information that CTO could post special announcements about different events. there's some customization options here for CTO to explore. I'm going to go into the Caribbean Sustainable Tourism Policy and Development course. And here we see a welcome page. And we've taken the information from the policy development framework and we've put that into Moodle. So I'm going to just collapse this side menu here, and you can see that there are the 7 modules that are tied to the different frameworks of the guide, as well as an introduction at the beginning and a summative assessment and some wrap-up information at the end. The introduction guides the user through the course, gives them some background information. They can download the course guidelines, which provide information about how the course is structured, as well as information about the summative assessment at the end. Some background information, images that that mirror the images in the guide, some information about how it was put together, the people involved, the organizations involved, and also a bit of a guide to how the modules are structured. Some information about how to navigate, what to expect within a module, how to view it in full screen mode, how to navigate again down at the bottom. So that's all there. I'm going to go into one of the actual modules. We'll pick module 5. So each module starts out with a slide introduction. This slide introduction gives the context for that module. It provides information about, again, some more context, some information about the development goal for this module, how it's tied to the UN SDGs, and there's some other pop-up information that provides some wider context and some more information about how this ties to those goals. This is a structure that's mirrored in all the other modules as well. And then what to do next to complete the module. I will show you as we go through, but we do have policy and action areas. There's a regional benchmark, a planning worksheet, and some information down below about how to navigate further. So from there, each of the modules has a policy and action area. This is accessible by this side menu here, and also at the top and bottom menus as well. So we've broken these down so that the objective is front and center, and then the strategic interventions and best practices are available, and they can be collapsed through this accordion menu. Some of them are quite lengthy. Okay. Each of the strategic interventions and best practices, after that, we follow up with a case study. And the case study, we've embedded information, we've embedded, sometimes there's some videos, some links out, some other images. This one has some basic information. I'll show you one that has some videos embedded as well. And then after that, there's a short knowledge check, 4 or 5 questions. Either fill in the blank or this drag and drop interface or true and false. These are not graded. The progress through them is not tracked. This is not the assessment. This is just a quick check to see how they are doing. And you can see that I haven't really done well here, but I can retry and go back. Some multiple choice. And there's some true and false in here as well, and multiple select. So then I'll quickly just go into the next section here, this policy and action area, and you can see a similar structure where we've got the objective at the top, and then we've got the strategic interventions and best practices that can be expanded. This section has 2 case studies. The first from Belize, that is talking about the Nature Conservancy. And then at the end, there are some videos that will play for the users. These are embedded from YouTube videos. And there's also some original media that we've uploaded. And again, a knowledge check down at the bottom where the user can go through, make their selections and check along the way. True and false question, and then finish. And it tells them how they did. So after the policy and action areas, each module has a regional benchmark. And this is a PDF that has been taken from the guide, the framework document, a short introduction, and then that is something that can be downloaded or printed off for the participant to use. Sorry about that. And then a regional best practice. A couple of the modules have a regional best practice. Again, we've taken some information from the guide, the framework document, and made it available for the user to review. Every module has a gap analysis document as well. This is a planning worksheet, and it's a structure that's repeated in all of the modules. It's an opportunity for participants to reflect based on the information they've been presented with and based on their local context, what notes they have, what they want to bring forward in order for affecting change in their own environment. So this is something that can be filled out. There's an opportunity to identify some goals. So I'm just putting in some placeholders here, goal 2. And then there's an opportunity for the user to do some assessment on the goal, whether they are low priority, high priority, medium priority. From there, there's prompts to identify what resources might be needed, and these could be URLs, they could be people, they could be policy documents, it could be resources in terms of money. And then once the participant is done with this, this worksheet, they can create a document, they can download it, print it off, continue work on it, or save it for their own use. And then at the end of every module, we provide some navigation. This concludes module 5. To access the other modules, click on the navigation links below or use the main menu at the left of the screen. So beyond the modules, at the end, there is a summative assessment. And the summative assessment, these are questions that have been provided by CTO and massaged. It's put into the Moodle environment. Let me go to full screen again. So this is a multiple choice. There's also some true and false. It walks through the different modules, provides a couple of questions for each, as well as some questions specific to the case studies that are presented. The user goes through. And in order to pass, there's a 65% threshold. So there's 20 questions, there's 20 marks, and the user needs to get 13 out of 20. You get 2 attempts at the quizzes, and then when that's all done, and provided that the user passes, the participant passes, there's some information in the wrap-up section which provides them with a message of congratulations, an opportunity to do a course evaluation. And then from there, and I'm going to go back to my slide presentation here. There we can see the summative assessment, the course evaluation, some basic information, 8 quick questions about what they learned in the course and their impressions of it. And then after all that is completed, then a certificate of completion is generated by the system for them to print off or save. So that is the one course there. Quickly, I will show you the multi-hazard course. Going back to my dashboard, there are some placeholders in the multi-hazard risk Management for the Caribbean Tourism Sector course. We're still developing some of the imagery and putting together the summative quiz. But you will see, and the reason why I'm showing you this now is that it follows a similar format. The modules are a little bit different based on the nature of the course, but we do have a nice introduction that will guide the users through. Also, for the modules themselves, again, similar navigation, a different layout. We've got a different style for the slide presentations. This course has a fair number of PDF downloads, worksheets that the participants can take and continue their work in this area. And then again, a knowledge check with some multiple choices and other fill in the blank type material, true and false. So there will be, again, a summative assessment at the end, which will be similar in length, similar in design, and then certificates and course evaluations. So that's it from me. I'm going to thank you for your attention, and thanks again to the organizers of the event. It's been really wonderful working with CTO and my colleagues that are on the line, Sandy and Kyla from Niagara College. And I will turn things back over to our chair. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mackey, and thank you to Niagara College once again. As you can tell, we're quite excited about being able to offer these two courses, and we will be looking to roll those out in the new year. So once again, thanks to all who gave input into this process. As Mr. Mackey said, thank you to Call. Marette Newman and her team worked very closely with us as we sought to get this online platform up and running to be able to offer these two resources to you in an online course. So we've now reached our question and answer session. We hope that you've been able to post your questions. If you haven't done so as yet, we invite members of the audience to write any questions or comments directed to any of the presenters, including the CDB and the CTO representatives, into that Q&A section. So we do have a few questions that I will bring up for you. A question is here regarding, I believe this is related to the policy framework. Why was climate smart action treated as a separate issue from risk resilience? I can leave that question to perhaps either Dr. Edwards,
Yes.
Yeah.
Risk resilience, it's not only related to the environment. Risk resilience is related to a range of other man-made, natural area that particularly they're specific. Climate action, it's only going to impact one area of risk resilience. So it's actually an area. The area we looked at within climate action, it's totally different. They are all linked. So climate action was deemed to be relevant enough to stand alone. It's also a specific goal within the UNSDG.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards, for that response. We have a few questions around accessing the multi-hazard guide, and I guess that would go for accessing both of those resources. Amanda Charles, would you like to respond to this for us?
Absolutely. Thank you, Sharon, and good morning, everyone. The Multi-Hazard Risk Management Guide, as well as the Sustainable Tourism Policy and Development Framework, will be posted to CTO's website, as well as our tourism.onecaribbean.org sub-site that we developed to support the regional tourism and education awareness campaign. So these were really created as regional public goods, and will be made widely available. I think before the end of the year, we will also circulate a link for everyone to download. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that was Ms. Amanda Charles. She's the Sustainable Tourism Specialist at the Caribbean Tourism Organization, and she was the project coordinator for the Supporting a Climate Smart and Sustainable Caribbean Tourism Industry project. So some of your queries, some of your questions or comments will be directed to Ms. Charles as well. We have another question here, and again, I'm going to invite Ms. Charles to respond to this. Is there a cost in order to access training courses offered on the website, or is it by invitation only?
Thank you again, Sharon. So the courses will be available to CTO, member countries. We are working out the mechanics in terms of the actual live availability of the courses. Certainly, it will be at no cost to all of our members and nationals in really CTO and CDB's mutual member countries that will benefit from these resources.
Thank you very much, Ms. Charles, for that response. That would also have tackled when will the online courses become live. And as we said, we would be looking to roll those out early in the new year. Do we have any other questions? We have comments. We have comments regarding how wonderful the information is and the introduction of the online course, online courses. Do we have any other questions coming from those in attendance? And if we don't have any further questions, we thank those who have made contributions by way of the questions. We have a question regarding the availability of today's presentations. Is it possible for us to have access to those presentations that were made today, as well as the introduction that was given to both the policy framework and the multi-hazard policy framework document, as well as the manual, the guide, sorry, for the multi-hazard risk management. Amanda, would you like to respond here in terms of its accessing these presentations?
Certainly, Sharon. I believe in the past we have circulated a recording to webinar attendees, and I'm certain that this can again be accommodated by Ms. Sharon Coward. So it would be affirmative, yes, we will share. And of course, we will just, relay with the panelists in terms of they being okay with us sharing the webinar recording.
Yes, yes. Thank you for that response. And we had another question with respect to, will partner agencies be able to have access to the resources for use in their programming? And I can almost say a resounding yes. Of course, it's going to be made available for all to be able to roll out your own policy development, your own program development. Anything addition to that, Amanda, that you would like to add?
No, absolutely. Again, the idea, even with the development of the courses, was to really mainstream and foster adoption, use, adaptation as needed. And that is really why we partnered with the CDB to have updated tools, and went a step further in saying we would develop courses to ensure that the materials, could be easily understood, and they would be complemented with templates to foster adoption and adaptation. So, our regional partners have supported us in, finalizing these resources. And certainly, with the idea of a common vision for Caribbean tourism, CTO will be very pleased to share with our partner agencies.
Thank you, Amanda. There was a question regarding whether the CTO online training platform will only be for CTO programming, or can other destinations use this platform? And at this point in time, it really is for CTOs programs as we develop this platform to be able to offer to our member countries. Perhaps in the near future, we would look at how we can support your training initiatives or member countries' training initiatives through this platform. But for right now, we are going to develop it to be able to offer you various training initiatives that can be done in a virtual context. Any questions that we have left? Any plans for, yes, for virtual, any plans for future virtual courses? That is our intention, to be able to work with our partners to develop other virtual courses that we can place on our online training platform. And this will happen, you know, over time. We have some things in the works, so we are hoping to be able to increase our online course offering to you sometime during the course of next year. And I just want to make sure that I have all of the questions before we move on. Partner agencies will be able to access the resources. The outside of, sorry, I think we've tackled all of the questions. I believe we've done so.
I believe there was one, Sharon.
I've missed one. Go ahead.
Of Guyana, asking whether this platform would later host delivering quality service training.
Ah, right. Okay, so that is one of the initiatives that we do have in train, hopefully next year, that we can work through to be able to be offering some of our professional development courses, programs that we currently offer to you via this online type of portal. So yes, we're working on that. And I believe that we've managed all of the questions. So thanks to all of you for your comments and for your questions. You know, Amanda is available at any point in time. Most of you have our email addresses, that if you have any further questions or need any clarification regarding what we're doing with this project, please do feel free to reach out to us. And so now it is my pleasure to invite Amanda Charles to make the closing remarks, as well as to deliver the vote of thanks. Amanda, over to you.
Thank you, and good morning all. It is my pleasure to join our Acting Secretary General, Mr. Neil Walters, in extending cordial greetings from the Caribbean Tourism Organization, CTO, of course recognizing the protocol that has already been established. So in delivering the vote of thanks, I would like to firstly acknowledge the financial contribution of the European Union through the ACP EU Natural Disaster Risk Management Program, and of course the Caribbean Development Bank for the unwavering commitment to the CTO and the Caribbean tourism sector in providing the grant financing that allowed us to implement this 3-year multifaceted project. I would like to extend a special thank you to Dr. Yves Robert Persona, the NDRM project manager at the CDB, my counterpart for this project. I recall many late nights, you know, jointly working to finalize the project proposal document for submission to the CDB Board of Governors. Thank you for defending the project, really championing the support for Caribbean tourism. Thanks is also owed to Mr. Paul Saunders, Carol Ann Wharton, and not forgetting Miss Cheryl Dixon at the CDB for the support and contribution throughout project implementation. So CTO was really very proactive and acted with great foresight in initiating negotiations with the CDB and subsequently being awarded the grant. Shortly after we began implementation, the region was devastated in 2017 by Hurricanes Irma and Maria. In 2019, of course, Hurricane Dorian impacting the Bahamas. And in 2020, we are still grappling with the COVID-19 pandemic. And it's, you know, with all of these hiccups that we, you know, are very pleased today to finalize these 3 core deliverables of the project and really provision a suite of tools and resources to contribute to the sustainability of tourism in our region. So I would like to also commend the work of the project consultants, and you've heard from them today. Dr. Edwards, who worked with us on the Caribbean Sustainable Tourism Policy and Development Framework. Such a pleasure to work with, and I remember she telling me 8 months down the line, Amanda, this is the final version, but I know you will be back. And I have to say, every time I did come back, okay, even at the start of 2020, when I said, Jennifer, we cannot publish without including something related to COVID-19. And again, you know, she was able to say, okay, no problem, and, you know, enhance the guide with that information. So I'm so pleased we have an updated, fully updated Sustainable Tourism Policy and Development Framework. And this is an update to the previous Sustainable Tourism Policy Framework. And because we added, you know, best practices and strategies for action, we thought it was more holistic as a tool to guide policy, but also development of tourism. As it relates to the multi-hazard risk management guide, I just want to reiterate that a number of resources have been, you know, produced in that area for the tourism sector, including the multi-hazard contingency planning manual done by the OAS in 2009, OAS supported by SEDERA. So what we've produced is not, you know, to duplicate what the guide, the contingency planning manual contains. We think this remains a very valuable tool and resource. What was lacking as it relates to climate adaptation and mitigation, gender sensitization, and information for crisis communication, documentation, etc., we have incorporated in this, you know, multi-hazard risk management guide. So as it relates to work on the guide, certainly I thank Mr. Evan Green, who was supported by Dr. Mariba Scott, as well as the University of Technology of Jamaica, who supported the development of this Multi-Hazard Risk Management Guide 2020. As it relates to other project activities, Mr. Walters would have mentioned a feasibility study to inform the needs related to climate services in tourism. This was done by the ESSA Consulting Group, Canadian-based. It was finalized in 2019 with the support of our partner CIMH. And it was really presented at the Caribbean Climate Conference hosted by CIMH. And we facilitated an exchange with the Met services and the other, you know, climate stakeholders, climate sector stakeholders, again, to sort of formalize that nexus between, with tourism being recognized as a climate sensitive sector. So thank you. The regional education and awareness campaign that was conducted in 2018, supported by the Caribbean Media Corporation, who produced and disseminated video content. We also engaged a social media company, a young group of entrepreneurs from Martinique, And this was led by Mr. Kennedy Pemberton, who was contracted as a consultant, as the sustainable tourism consultant at the CTO. Kennedy supported implementation of this project through 2017, 2018, and much of 2019. So a big thank you is also owed to him. We also worked on some flyers, and I know this has been disseminated to most of our member countries across the region. We created some flyers with responsible tourism tips for tourism employers and employees, and some postcards as well for visitors. And this was done by a Trinidad and Tobago based company, Adaptive Design. Really very attractive. And of course, we encourage our stakeholders to utilize and, even replicate these resources. We come now to the online training platform, and CTO contracted Niagara College Canada, represented today by education consultant Mr. Kyle Mackey. And as Sharon Banfield would have mentioned, we wanted the multi-hazard risk management guide and the policy framework not just to be two other publications that sit on a shelf. We wanted to ensure that there was region-wide access, and it was also presented in a manner easily digestible with tools and templates to foster adaptation and use. So we were very happy when the Commonwealth of Learning partnered with the CTO and offered to host the online training platform and provided substantial support for the development of the two online courses. So thank you again, Dr. Balaji, as well as Dr. Maret Newman, who worked with us from 2017, and in speaking of all of our regional, in thinking of all of our regional partners, many of them actually provided letters of support to the CTO, which we, used as to validate their support for the project, and in terms of rendering their expertise as well. And I would like to note these regional partners: the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, CDEMA, of course, the Caribbean Institute for Meteorology and Hydrology, the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center, certainly CALL, and our industry partner, the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association, particularly Mr. Frank Amito, the CEO, and Loretto Duffy Mayers, who, even today continues to support our work as it relates to resilience broadly. And also, it would be remiss of me not to mention the regional partners that, CTO has a long history of collaboration with, and that includes the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, the Organization of American States, UE, CAFA, ECA, and others. A special thank you is owed to our member countries, the directors and permanent secretaries of tourism of CTO member countries, the members of the CTO Sustainable Tourism Technical Committee. We have leaned on you, and I have worked closely with you the past 3 years of project implementation. Certainly, our private sector partners, our allied and affiliate members, including the CEOs of the National Hotel and Tourism Association and others. In wrapping up my vote of thanks and comments as I reflect on the past 3 years, I would like to note with profound appreciation the support of the CTO Secretariat, at all levels of implementation. Certainly Mr. Riley and Mr. Walters for the leadership and support, Ms. Sharon Banfield, you know, for her role today as chairperson, for her guidance, for her assistance, you know, every time of day and night, including last minute requests. And Sharon is the director for resource mobilization and development. So really it was our department that was responsible for implementation of this project with the CDB. In thinking as well of the team, of course, Kennedy Pemberton, whom I mentioned, Mr. Shomari Jones, who joined us in late 2019, Marvel Seeley, I think the glue that keeps us all together, and various interns, you know, that joined the division and supported our work the past 3 years. To the other directors and staff of CTO who fulfilled various roles, whether it was to serve on a committee to evaluate consultants, whether it was, you know, such as Faye Gill, who provided that support, support as it relates to tourism statistics, Sean Smith and the research team, John Rose, who supported the education and awareness campaign, Sharon Coward, who actually developed from scratch, you know, the Our Tourism website, and, you know, the various videos for the education and awareness campaign. You know, she supported that. It really was her voice. And we featured some staff members such as Paul Gans, you know, Christy, and additional support rendered by, you know, Mariama Trotman, Charlene Drakes, Angela Maynard, and others. This really was an organizational wide endeavor, and none of this in terms of what we have accomplished would be possible without the support of so many members of staff of the CTO. So I just would like to share with everyone that certainly this project was very proactive by the CTO in seeking to mainstream not only climate change adaptation, but disaster risk management strategies, and foster the principles and practices of sustainable tourism to tourism product development, destination management, and planning. We all know that tourism is one of the most important pillars supporting the regional economy and contributing substantially to social and economic growth, driving employment, entrepreneurship, investment, and foreign exchange earnings, among others. I think the role and contribution of tourism has become even more prominent given the impact of COVID-19. So through the provisioning of these resources, it really is our hope that they will be used by the regional public and private tourism sector and our regional partners, and contribute to the sustainable growth and resilient development of tourism now and in the future. I would like to thank you all for making the time to attend today's webinar. As we have mentioned, the 2 publications will be posted to CTO's website, as well as our tourism campaign website. And we will also circulate a link to download the resources and to provide access to the 2 online courses. So thanks all, and we really do appreciate the interest and engagement of, I think, what we can call our regional tourism community. Thank you. Over to you, Sharon.
Well, just thank you to everyone again, and let me extend to all for the remainder of your day a great one, and we look forward to rolling out the online courses next year, and you can look for further information on that in terms of our membership and our non-partners, as Amanda said, our membership and our project partners. As Amanda said, this will be made free to you, and any further information regarding our non-project members and non-members of CTO, we will let you know what that small fee will look like. So thanks again to all of you, and wishing everyone a safe end of year. Thank you.